أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Tonight, inshallah, we will continue our tutorials on how to read the Holy Quran, and tonight we will go through our fourth lesson, which will be the beginning lesson on capital letters and lowercase letters. The letters that we have gone over so far are what we would consider the capital letters. And just as we have capital letters and lowercase letters in English, we also have capital letters and lowercase letters in Arabic as well. Now, when it comes to the lowercase letters, some letters do not change. What happens when a letter goes from a capital letter to a lowercase letter? It happens when it connects with another letter in a certain way. However, there are certain letters of the Arabic alphabet whose shape will not change whether they are by themselves or they're connected to another letter. So it's these letters: Alif, Dal, Dhal, Ra, Za, Ta, Dha, Waw, and Hamza. Of course, the Hamza does not connect to a letter at all, but none of these letters have any lowercase forms. They will always look this way no matter where they are, by themselves or connected to another letter. Now, one of the easy ways that we could think of the lowercase letters and the letters that have lowercases, we could think of the letters that have lowercase letters as those that have large tails or large curved endings. Of course, we would think that some of the other letters like the Ra and the Za and the Waw might also have curved letters, but this helps us to remember that most of the letters that have these large curved endings are the ones that are going to have lowercase letters. And these letters that you see here, they will change when they connect to other letters. The Ba, Ta, Tha, Jim, Ha, Kha, Sin, Shin, Sad, Dad, Ain, Ghain, Fa, Qaf, Kaf, Lam, Mim, Noon, Ha, and Ya. These letters, they will have a different form. They will look different. Now, the way that we go from a capital letter to a lowercase letter in most cases is very simple. And we can get to that simple method by thinking of each letter as having what we call a top and a tail. Now, as you see here, this is the letter Jim. The blue portion that you see here along with its dot is what we would consider the top of the letter. And the green portion, the green curved ending that we see here, we can consider this as the tail. So now each letter has a top and what we'd consider a tail. So to make a lowercase letter, we keep the top and we drop the tail. So we see on the right here, we have the full capital Jim. But to make the lowercase, which we see here on the left, what do? We drop the tail. We keep the top and we drop the tail. Now, please remember that whenever we keep the top, the dots are always part of the top. We don't ever drop any of the dots. So now let's look at the letters that have lowercase forms. We see here that we've easily put in blue the parts that we would consider the tops, and in green the parts that we would consider the tail. So you see that each letter has a top, blue part, and each letter has a green tail portion. So now let's look at the next chart. This is all of the tops without their tails. Let's look again at the full letters, the tops with the tails. Now let's look at the tops without the tails. These are the lowercase forms. Now, one of the things that we learned when we were going over the capital letters of the alphabet was that there are certain letters whose shape is exactly the same, and the only difference between them is in the dots, whether it has a dot underneath, 2 dots on top, 3 dots on top, and so on. When it comes to the lowercase letters, this is the same. So now we have these 5 letters, the Ba, Ta, Tha, Noon, and Ya. When they get changed to their lowercase forms, they have the same shape. It is just this very small curve that you see right here. This, we're going to outline it for you right here. This very small curve is the same for all of them. The only difference is in the dots. So we have to remember that the Ba has 1 dot underneath, Ta has 2 dots on top, Tha has 3 dots on top, Noon has 1 dot on top and Ya has 2 dots underneath. So then when we look at these forms here, the lower cases, and we see that they all have the same shape, we know the difference between them by the number of dots that they have and where the dots go. So these 5 will all look the same. Our next set is the Jim, Ha, and Kha. As you can see, we have the lower cases on the left. And how do we get the lowercase forms? We drop the tails. You see, we drop this tail portion on each one. Drop the tail, drop the tail, drop the tail, and we keep the top portions. And there, lo and behold, we have the lowercase letters. And it's the same with the rest of them. We drop the tail on the Sin, and we have the lowercase Sin. We drop the tail on the Sheen, and we have the lowercase Sheen. Same with the Sad, we keep the top to make the lowercase. Same with the Dad, we keep the top to make the lowercase. Now the Fa and the Qaf, in the capital forms, they look a little bit different. But in the lowercase form, they look exactly the same, but the Fa has 1 dot on top and the Qaf has 2 dots on top. Now the Kaf, it loses this little tail that it has at the end. However, the top portion will change in shape when it goes to its lowercase form. Why? Because if we had kept the top portion of the Kaf, it would have looked exactly the same as the top portion of the Lam. So what do? We bend the top portion of the Kaf a little bit. So we have this shape here for the lowercase of the Kaf. When it connects to another letter on its left, this is what it's going to look like. And then we have the Lam losing its tail and becoming just a straight line with a little twist at the bottom. Now, you might think that this looks like the Alif, but one rule that we'll mention now and that you're going to learn later is that in order to not make the mistake between Lam and Alif, you see this is the lowercase form of the Lam and this is the Alif. Now sometimes you might think that they look exactly the same. How do we know that this one on the right is a Lam and this one is an Alif? Well, we know by how they connect to other letters. How do we know this? The Lam will connect to a letter on its left, but the Alif will never connect to a letter on its left. For example, if we have an Alif and we want to put another letter after it, we have to leave some space. So if I want to put a Noon here, I have to leave a space between the Alif and the Noon. But when I write the Lam and there's another letter on its left in the same word, I connect it to the Noon. So this is how I know the difference between the two. So moving on, just as we drop the tail on the other letters, here we have the Meme. We drop the straight tail that it has, and we have the head left on it. And that is the end of the lowercase letters. So just as when you practice the capital letters, you got a piece of paper and a pencil or pen, and you practice them by tracing the lowercase letters and capital letters and writing them down, you should do the same with the lowercase letters. Get a chart of the Arabic alphabet and trace the letters, the capital letters, trace the lowercase letters, and then practice writing them yourself. And as you write each one, say out loud the name of the letter that you're writing. So if you're writing this lowercase of the Ba, you say Ba as you write it. So this way, it's going to stay in your mind.